Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Mike. I'm delighted to have with me today Seven Suphi. Firstly, Seven, I love your name. It's almost, for me, Tiger Woods. What a great name that was as a golfer. And I've never met anyone with the name Seven, so beautiful name. More importantly is the impact that I've seen firsthand Seven having on recruitment businesses. So I'm going to tell a little story in a moment about when I first came across Seven, and that was through a client of mine who ran a recruitment business, and he bought various training services from me over the years. And he said, Mike, nothing else to buy from you because I've just sold my recruitment company. And I said, oh, congratulations. What was it that made the difference? And he said it was Seven Suphi. So I thought, wow, that's interesting, and that's someone I should get to know. So Seven then came along to one of my director programs and spoke at the event, and we filmed that session. It was a sparkling presentation with some key learning points. So Seven, I'm delighted to have you here today to share your wisdom with us, and also looking forward to having questions from the audience. So there will be Q&A within this. So just to remind everyone before Seven starts, if you have a question that you'd like to pose to Seven, please pop that in the chat room. I will pick that up and then move on from there. So once again, delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Mike. It's lovely to be here, and thank you for inviting me again.
Pleasure. So we'll try and keep this on point, and we'll go, well, we've done introductions to some degree, so you can look up Seven on the website there, odyssey-solutions.co.uk, of course, and by all means, please connect with her on LinkedIn. So I suppose a question most people will have after my intro to you is the one on the screen, that I came across you from one of my clients, and you've helped them achieve amazing results. How did you do it?
Oh, well, great question. And the key thing, I'll go through the key things that we did, but the one thing that I do is focus on impact on every work that I do. And if you want to have a big uplift to do with behaviors, you've got to focus on the individuals, the team, and the context that they're in. So all three matters. And if you focus on all those three, then you do get a big uplift. And the thing is what most people do is they focus on a lot of things. And what we did was focus on one or two things that had the greatest impact. So when you ask someone, what's going to make the greatest impact on your performance, or you ask the MD, what's going to make the greatest impact on that person's performance, it distills everything and focuses the mind. And yes, of course, you're only focusing on one or two things each time you're having the session, but over time it builds up and it has a snowballing effect that is much better than making a big list, because it's also a motivator. But anyway, so that's really it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And can you give us some examples of what you mean by focusing in on one or two things, or perhaps just give us one example?
Well, I don't want to go too much into detail because obviously there's the people that I work with. But if I give you an example of like what we did was at the beginning of every day that I was there on the client side, I would meet with the MD first. And obviously right at the beginning of the sessions, I had a meeting with him to talk about each person and what each person requires. Now it varies. So it's difficult to say because the spectrum's so great, because it varies from this person is finding it difficult to pick up the phone. It's like they just don't want to, or this one's having a difficulty in their personal life. I mean, the example that you're talking about, that particular MD was actually wanting me to work with his people, not only from their business perspective and sales, but also from their personal lives as well, because he recognized that the context, their life, actually had an impact on their performance at work, which is very enlightened of him. Most leaders don't do that. So I did work with some of the people to do with their personal challenges. because it was having an impact on their performance. So it does vary. So I know I feel uncomfortable about going into too much detail, but I can definitely tell you from a recruitment perspective, the common theme that came up is the rejection, the building of confidence, building resilience. We did the resilience building quite a lot. So, and different people view it in different ways, that how do you deal with rejection, and how do you build a strong inner core so things are water off a duck's back. But yeah, does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think you've already given a good indicator there, Savannah, if I might say, because the personal things do affect people's work life. You know,
Yeah.
and as a caring employer, you know, and in recruitment, we, of course, recruitment business owners want results. We want people winning new business, closing deals, upwards, 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 and onwards. But of course, people have issues in their lives. And one example was a board appointment I had with a company, and £1 million biller kind of went off the rails a bit, and in fact disappeared from the business. That's a big hit. And it turned out he had some partner issues, actually, with his partner, and that was seriously affecting his life. And the MD took some brilliant action, which was fast forward, ended up with the MD being best man at his wedding when the relationship was repaired. You know, so and how many recruitment directors or managers care deeply enough about their people in their personal lives? So I think you've hinted at something there at a practical level that you know that can be applied. It's more what I'm getting from that is deeply caring about your staff and doing something about it. Is that fair comment?
Well, absolutely, it is. It is exactly that. And also, I mean, this MD recognized that not only that has an impact, but also that when you show that to your people, they feel appreciated, and therefore they give you more as well. So there is two sides of it. There's the, if there is an issue, you can deal with it, and you can actually help, and you can understand what the root cause of that behavior is. So that's when things are going badly. On a positive side, when you're helping them and you're investing in them, there's a feeling of, well, my leader is investing in me. I am worthy of investment. There's recognition. I mean, going into the practical level now, as your question suggests, one of the things we did right at the beginning was, actually I should say, we went through a cycle. It was a repeated cycle, and there were 3 phases: understanding the situation, intervention, and then embedding the changes. But those phases weren't straight cut, they flew into each other. And you went through the cycle, but right at the beginning, the first thing I did with the MD was go through each employee, like I suggested earlier, but the additional thing to finding out what was the key one thing, or 2, but I really wanted him to focus on 1, if possible. Was it, you know, besides that, the other 2 things were, what are their strengths? So what, if you could say 3 things, if there's more, fantastic, but what strengths do they have? So we want to boost them up, just in case they did have confidence issues, because a lot of people do. Then we looked at what was the key one thing that they can focus on. And on top of that, we looked at, what do you see as the potential of that person in 2 years' time? So the individual then also feels that positive feeling of, my boss, my MD has invested in me and sees this as my potential. So that made, you know, really made a big difference. Anyway, so in terms of practical, so we met with the MD, then had the one-to-one sessions, each one lasting 1 hour. Then if we did do workshops, we did. If we didn't, we didn't. It depended on if the team needed it. And then I met with the MD again at the end of the day to go through common themes. So everything is confidential on the one-to-one session, but if there are common themes that affect the business, that affect the overall thing, then that suggests that maybe next time we should do a workshop that everyone can benefit from. Or if there is a strength to be built up, So for example, in this particular company, they were brilliant at talking about things, which leveraged really well, because straight away after the first session, there were a couple of people that did exceptionally well and got amazing results. And they talked about it to everyone, and therefore everyone got to hear of it and others wanted it. So whereas it would usually take a bit more time to build because people aren't usually that open, this organization was like really open, very chatty, talk to each other about everything. So that was a strength. But as strengths can also be a weakness, when there were challenges, they'd talk to each other and bring each other down. So one of the key things I did right at the beginning when we did the workshop was to get them to focus on energy. Are you adding positive energy? Are you adding negative? Are you depleting? Are you adding to? Is it positive? Is it negative? And made them really aware of what was going on so they could self-regulate because of that situation. Anyway, I don't know if I've gone on too much there. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. You know, we all know the value of going to the gym for our health. It strikes me that what you're doing is taking them to the gym for their mind, and it's got a feeling of a trusted advisor, a personal counsellor, a confidant, someone who you can share some concerns with. And let's face it, in today's world of mental health issues and being increasingly in the press, you know, and issues in the workplace, that's needed in many instances. So is that fair comment?
Yeah, it is. It's a really good comment. And I'd actually add one more thing to it. So my focus is on the mind and emotions. Well, at least they're the tools, and my focus is really performance. So if someone is heartbroken, or they've got cancer in the family, or whatever, ... then that's going to impact their performance. So that's something I need to work with to help them with, you know, their work agenda as well. And equally, if they're reticent to do something because they're not confident, or if they just don't know how because they haven't got the recipe, they are the things that I focus on. So yes, I think the mind and the gym for the mind and emotions. I love that. I might use that.
Okay. On to the next
Right.
question.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Because you talked about performance, which I'm sure any recruitment directors listening are going to be particularly interested in, and I'm sure we all care about our staff, but performance. So, how can you get recruiters to be their best?
Right. Okay. So this is assuming you don't want to hire someone like me and you want to do it yourself. I'm going to give you 3 steps that I think are really important to do if you want to do it yourself. One is to be open. Now, we all think we're open-minded, but actually, it's in most cases, I find people aren't as open as they think they are. And so I want you to imagine that you're a detective and you're curious to discover what you're going to discover, and appreciate that everyone is unique and they're different. So we have an unconscious bias that basically makes us think that we are like others, and we're not. So we judge people based on our own model of the world. So anyway, so very important to be open. That's one. The second is, in a team setting, it's really important to identify which of your people is contagious. And by that, I mean, they are charismatic. They are the people that others look to. So if you can identify who those people are, and if you can win them over, then they'll do the rest for you. But in most cases, what happens is that there's an initiative that happens and leadership is saying, you've got to do this. And then the contagious people are saying, oh, well, that's rubbish. Don't want to do that. And whatever else they may be saying. And then, of course, it doesn't work, because there's an assumption that if you're the boss, that people listen to you. Of course they do, yes, because you are the boss. But actually, contagious people are listened to as much, sometimes more, in certain settings. So that's 2. And then the third, I'm going to share with you an equation. I call it the performance equation. It's the reason how I'm able to guarantee the behavioral results that I've been able to do. Now, I'm not going to go into big detail of it, but there's one aspect of it that we used with this client, and I use with every client where I can, because it gives a big uplift in a general setting without knowing advanced behavioral change techniques. And that is, in any situation, if you want to improve somebody's performance is based on their potential and plus their strategies. So this is their know-how, plus or minus blocks. Now, I won't go into, in fact, I am going into too much detail there. I shall stop. Bottom line is those strategies initially that I stated, they can be learned. And we look at some people and go, oh, they're brilliant at that. That's just them. And we think it's not a recipe. While actually, when you dissect it, you realize that you can uncover what those recipes are, just like cooking recipes, the best performer recipes. So what we did early on was identify who were the top performers. And then what we did was get them to buy in to sharing their recipes and coaching others. So one of the workshops that we did in that client was not only identifying that, but and doing the energy, but also sharing the best practice. So sharing how they did what they did, and because you've got them bought into it, then it's also they're motivated to really help others. Now, there is one more thing you could do that they didn't do, but others have, and that is you can add, if you're going to be a buddy or a guide or a coach, internal coach, you can get perks, you can get bonuses. So there are things you can do there that can leverage it, because in recruitment especially, it's if you do something really well and you're a top performer, you want to hold on to your top performance, and you don't want other people to have the top performance, but you can have top performance in a variety of ways, and you can do it so that it really benefits the business as well as the individual. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And thank you. And so performance equals potential plus or minus obstacles or blocks, yeah?
It's equal to potential plus strategies,
yeah,
plus or minus blocks. So what it is on the website, but what I mean by that is the potential is like your character type. It's like, are you right-handed or left-handed?
Yeah.
You can't change it. It's innate. Now, the strategies, they're in brackets, the potential and strategies. Strategies are things that you've learned. Either you've learned it on a training course, or you've learned it unconsciously through the mirror neurons in your brain. Now, it's that second part of learning that you're not aware of, but you do it. And most people think that it's just part of them, it's who they are, but it's not, it's what they've learned. And they've learned it unconsciously. And you can learn it unconsciously as an adult as well as a child. So those strategies is what we focused on. Now, some of them were conscious, some of them were unconscious, but you focus on that, you copy it, and then you share it with others. Now, the plus or minus blocks, the blocks are negative emotions or limiting beliefs. So, for example, fear of failure can have a positive impact on performance if you're really scared of failing and it makes you work really, really hard. Now, you can have a negative impact on performance with exactly the same fear of failure if the fear of failure makes you timid and has you hold back and reticent from doing anything. Of course, performance is going to fall down. So depending on the context, depending on the individual, that equation is something that has evolved over the last 2 decades. The thing is, it can get complicated when you go into it, but what really matters here is that a lot of people assume that their potential is, if their skills are also part of their potential. And actually it isn't. It's skills, it's things that they've learned, and you can separate that and you can copy it and you can reproduce it. Now, the key thing that also recruitment people need to know is that there is a hunger in recruitment people, sales people generally, that I have yet to learn how to instill. So I would say that hunger is innate, but I'm not sure if it's blocks driven or not, but I know I haven't figured that part of the equation yet. But hey, I'm still reasonably young, so we shall see. But anyway, in terms of what people can practically do straight away is identify best performers and then get them to leverage that knowledge with the rest of the organization in a practical way where the best performer is also engaged in doing that.
Yeah, fantastic. I think if you think of sitting down and coaching one of your employees with that formula to hand, most people, I think, in recruitment would get potential and strategies. So we've hired someone with potential, we trained them in these strategies, but probably what they're not doing is looking at the blocks and the obstacles, really.
Okay.
I would think. So next question really is, I hear clients saying, I heard this guy, that his dumb brother showed up to work. What would your comments be on that, Seven?
Okay, so that's a really interesting one. So do you remember me saying earlier about being open-minded?
Mm-hmm.
This to me is, someone says this where they don't understand that they are projecting. So ultimately, if you hire someone and the person that shows up is not who you thought, there is an issue with your recruitment process and or induction process, but it's more than likely to be the recruitment process. If that is so, and if you are the person that's done the recruitment, it's very likely you weren't open-minded enough and you are projecting. And it's very common to project that people are like ourselves. So when you see the person, you ask them questions, you think, right, yep. You assume what you see is who they are, rather than instilling down. Now, without actually talking to the individual that said that to you, I really don't know what the situation is. But it did remind me of an experience I personally had very early on in my career. I was a consultant at Coops and Lybrand, and it was my first recruitment opportunity where I was hiring someone, and we worked very late in those days. And I asked if she was willing to work late, and she said yes, and that was it. I moved on to the next question. What I hadn't appreciated at the time was that actually for her, working late was a few minutes after the contracted time, while working late for me was a few hours, or as long as it took until the work was done. So that was a very big wake-up call. But in terms of, besides knowing more details about that, the key thing I would say about that is to be open-minded and look at your recruitment process and or your induction process, but more likely your recruitment process, because either the questions weren't adequate enough, you weren't listening correctly, and or you weren't doing your cross checks effectively enough. So whoever the person was able to pull the wool under their eyes or over their eyes. But there you go. Does that help?
Yeah, I think potentially as well, not explaining things and assuming the other person knows intuitively what you're trying to explain. There's another one here. People saying, or client employers saying, I can't believe that a recruiter got a vacancy at 5:30 and went home. What's stopping them from staying? So is that in the same vein, do you think, as an issue?
I think it can be very, very same. I think, look, if someone is going to go, that you've got to understand the root cause and deal with it. So the thing is, there's a number of things that could happen as to why someone leaves at 5:30. So it could be a lack of understanding that in recruitment, when you get an opportunity, you've got to fill it, because if you don't, somebody else is going to fill it before you, or is far more likely to. So that's one. Now, the second is, it could be they're just not motivated. They just don't believe that the extra time is going to make any difference. They've already, clocked out. They think they're looking either for another job, but they are just not, they don't believe that they can do it. So although they understand it's important and critically important, timing, but they're not motivated. The third is hunger. The thing is you could actually understand it's important, and you may not have clocked out, but you just don't have the hunger. You are happy to get whatever sales you're going to get that month, and you're happy to go home and have a balanced life. And then the fourth is you already have a commitment that you have to go to. Maybe you're going to pick up someone from the hospital or from school, and there is no give on that timing. You've got to go. So unless you understand, and there could be something else. I mean, these were just the things that I could come up with, thinking, well, why would someone do that? Of course, the earlier example I gave about the contracted time, it could be that too. But until you drill down and you're curious and you understand the driver for that, you won't know. And I wouldn't be surprised if the person saying that actually assumes that the person that left knows the importance of timing. Because in a lot of organizations, the training is on the job until they book a training course for you. Well, that's a way later than you've been doing the job usually. So I think that could be a factor as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, one that I came across was a guy kept leaving pretty much on the dot. And it turned out the mistake was in the hiring process, as you intimated that earlier, because he was a semi-professional footballer and he went training twice a week. So those times were sacred for him. And then the owner of the business was complaining about that. So here's another one. Salespeople can be so cocky. Why can't they use the CRM system? Common complaints. They've made the call. It only takes 2 minutes to update records. So can these things be fixed with some kind of behavioural change support?
Yes, it can. And it's really important that you understand what the cause of this is. The bottom line is we're all animals and we're instinctive. And anyone that does that type of job instinctively knows that it's not effective to do a pattern interrupt, which is what it is. You're doing a state interruption. There you are having a conversation, and then you've got to stop that and write. Now, it's a different mode. And it's we unconsciously know it. Now, I'm sure none of the salespeople will ever say, well, actually, I don't want to do a state interrupt. So there can be cocky attitudes with it, defensiveness, and maybe some people are actually cocky. But I think it's really important to understand that if you are doing something, now imagine yourself doing something physical, whether you're dancing or but something, anything. Now, from that, imagine having to stop and write about it before you go dancing again. Now, how uncomfortable is that? Now, so this is a fact. It's because we're animals, because of the way we operate, that's what you're dealing with. Now, how do you overcome that? Well, there are ways. Two key ways that is easy to explain on something like this is to help the individuals with the state change. So some people are better at it than others, a bit like going to the gym and building muscle. Some people can lift more weight than others, and some people can run further than others. But the more you practice, the better you get. So there are techniques that can build those muscles for changing state. So that is one that you can absolutely do. But doing that involves employing someone like me. So you might not want to do that. If you didn't want to do that, there is only one other thing that I can think of that will absolutely help without knowing behavioral change stuff, and that is change the remuneration. So if you either give bonuses or penalize those that don't do it, then you force them to do it. And they will do it, because at the end of the day, whether they're carrot motivated or stick motivated, if you do both, you give them a bonus if they do it, and it has to be something that it works for you as a business and works for them. You know, it has to be motivational, and you penalize them if they don't. And maybe you can experiment with the options. But if you do those two things and doing nothing else, I can pretty much assure you, as long as you've got the figures right, they will change their behavior.
Very interesting. My attempt at that years ago, without really understanding a lot of this stuff, was to create an extra percentage bonus for the team. So we had a team,
Ah,
say 4 people in the team, and we said, right, guys, if everybody has, a clean audit, that's what we used to call it, of, and I might not choose that word now, of compliance for these things, and one of those things was updating the CRM,
yeah.
then if everybody gets that and targets are hit, then everybody gets another 1% on top of their billings. But if,
Genius.
but if,
Absolutely brilliant.
but if one person lets the side down,
Yeah.
then nobody gets the extra bonus.
Perfect. It's perfect.
The
That is
idea,
exactly what I'm talking. That's perfect. You did it instinctively, and you're very clever for doing it. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. Perfect. And what were your results? What did you discover?
absolutely, it worked. You got peer
Yeah.
pressure. You got people saying, "Hey, have you updated the system?"
Yeah.
We heard it in the office. So,
Yeah.
and then we weren't penalising people actually because we were giving them something extra. But it's just that
Yeah.
they didn't get the extra if they let the side down.
Well, that look, most salespeople are towards people. They're carrot people, so they're not away from. So usually, you don't need to do the penalisation. But what you need to appreciate is that, especially if you are ever to go on and run another type of business or anything like that, the general population is either carrot or stick. So it sounds like that worked as only the carrot worked for you. Fabulous. What you did there is, because you grouped it in with everybody, you then also got peer pressure, which is even more fabulous. So absolutely brilliant strategy without employing any behavioral change techniques. Change that about your business. You will absolutely get
Well,
the records updated.
no, I mean, thank you for that. But I look back on some of the things we didn't do, and you always look back and think we could have done better. And there were people that left the business that I think, with being dealt with in a better way, would have succeeded. Which brings me on to the next question that we have here. Why can't recruiters be like me? So I work really hard. I'm in early. I leave late. I do the deals, and so on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do get it. The the thing is, it goes back to that thing I was saying earlier. We expect others to be like ourselves, and we also can take for granted who we are and how we operate. The reality is, there is a very small percentage of the population that will ever start their own business. Full stop. And that's not even looking at the fact that most people don't want to do sales. The fear of talking to people in that way and selling something is just shocking for them. So it's what you need to appreciate is that there's a very small amount of people that can do this. So yes, is it possible to find someone like the founder at a young age when they're starting out that has that hunger? Now, yes, it may be possible, but you've got to appreciate that they're not going to be easy to find because there aren't that many. Otherwise, everyone would be running their own businesses. So it's important to realize and be, again, open-minded and actually look at, what is available to you as your potential employee and work with that.
I
Does
think
that help?
I think you used the phrase when we did the filming, Savannah, "Be the best you can be," or something like that.
Yes.
And surely it's
Yes.
the job of a CEO to help unlock the potential of people. So we come to the last question now, which is this one, which is, we're too busy to do training. We need to make money. So people who, let's say in recruitment, they're billing 100,000 a year, but in the same marketplace with the same types of candidates, the same types of clients, there's someone else billing £1 million a year. And yet you still get people saying we're too busy to do training and we need to make money. So what are your thoughts on that? And how do you influence change in a way of thinking where the person is looking to want to improve their performance rather than just stay static?
Okay. Look, I mean, ultimately, if the business is such that it's like the building's burning down, you know, there's a crisis going on, then of course you're not going to recommend doing any training. There are certain months of the year for every business where they just take their foot off the pedal when it comes to that type of stuff. However, like you said, about, you know, if you've got a similar business that's billing 100,000 and another 1 million, why aren't you doing 1 million? You know, it's a no-brainer. And this is the key point. If a business can't invest an hour or two of a person's time per month to improve performance, then it's only a matter of time they'll be outperformed by other businesses. Now, so that is an absolute. Now, I was also thinking, well, why is this question here? And I was thinking of, well, the character types of recruitment consultants. And most recruitment consultants, I don't know if the audience knows about Myers-Briggs, but anyway, they're ESTJs. That's the general, if you're a successful recruitment consultant, then you are likely to be an ESTJ profile. Now, one of the elements of that is the S, and that's the sensing preference. Now, what that means is you are very focused on the here and now. And if you have that with very little of the other, which is looking into the future and looking around and looking for connections through things, you will be too focused on you and the here and now to see that actually, if you don't do something, you're going to lose out. And you're going to lose out, you know, so like you said about, I mean, you're talking about the money that they're earning, but I think it could even be worse than that. You know, you could be earning 100,000 this year, and you could have potentially earned 1 million, but next year the market could change so much more that you could be earning 50,000 if you're not training and keeping up. So that's one side of it. Now, the other side of it is when you invest in your employees, they feel valued. Now that investment doesn't have to be monetary investment. It's great. They'll feel more valued if it's monetary investment, but even having the MD taking time out to think about that individual, like the questions that I asked at the beginning of the sessions, you know, what are the strengths? What's the one thing, if they were to focus on, is going to make a substantial difference in their performance? And then in, you know, a couple of years' time, where do you see this person? Well, what's their potential now that you see that you think could really be brilliant? Now, what MD do you know does that with their people? So if you can get them to do that, then I think it can make a big difference, as well as the direct uplift, you know, sharing of strategies, you know, sharing of best practice, or sharing specific courses that can be effective because they've done it themselves and they know the value of it, or trying something new. But the third thing is with the kind of training that I do, and I think it's valid for most trainings that are done in a team base, so workshops that are done. If there are any issues that have been brushed under the carpet because things are going on, there's too much going on and it's not dealt with, the thing is it can be identified and dealt with. And the problem with issues is they fester and they drain energy. But when you uncover them and deal with them, it liberates you. A bit like if you're carrying bags and it's carrying and weighing you down. Once you uncover those and they're taken off, you're liberated. You've got a lot more energy. So you've got more fuel in the car. You can go longer. You can go and go stronger. So anyway, they were the key insights I had about that. I don't know if that triggers anything else for you that you could add to, or
well, I think
any
it's just helped me clarify in my mind a little bit some of the key things that you do, Seven, which is open people's minds and unlock potential. And you know, there's so much unfulfilled potential in recruitment. I mean, you know, a question I've asked recruitment directors, I say, well, you've got 10 people. What are they billing on average? Oh, they're billing 120,000 each. Okay. What do you think they're capable of billing? Well, I think they should be doing 170. Okay, so that's £50,000 a year per person times 10. So there's another £500,000 from your current team without you hiring anyone. Yes, there is. you know, and it's like, you know, that piece is very interesting. So, I mean, I always find it fascinating to work with you. The video that we filmed with you, I thought was phenomenal. We've had lots of very positive feedback about that. I'm aware, of course, that you are a TV celebrity in your own right with the Virgin One documentary, the Naked Office, and so on. So I would urge people who listen today to please connect with Seven, check out you know, her website and so on. I'd like to say a big thank you for the insight you've given us today. I hope people go away from this inspired to open people's minds and unlock potential. Thank you once again, Seven.
Oh, thank you, Mike. It's my pleasure.
Cheers. Goodbye, everyone.
Okay, goodbye. Bye.